I love combining a solid nutrition plan with medications and appetite suppressants that can help with weight loss. Because sometimes, even when people are doing everything they possibly can to feel full and eating a whole food eating pattern, they still might need to cut their calories to a point where they're going to experience hunger. And this is where weight loss truly is challenging. Not to say that we have to be starving to see weight loss, but in reality, a weight loss plan or weight loss journey does include a calorie deficit. And so when your body is not getting the nutrients or the calories that it used to get, it sends signals. Your brain has signals that it sends as survival mechanisms. Your ghrelin level, considered your hunger hormone, and your ghrelin level typically goes up when you're on a weight loss plan. So combining a solid nutrition plan that has protein, carbohydrate, fat, fruits, vegetables, fiber with an appetite suppressant is just almost like magic to me, because it just makes sense that we would use a tool that, in combination with a healthy eating plan and in combination with working on changing lifestyle behaviors and mindsets, that it all goes together. I've had people who come to me and they say, I have literally tried everything. And then I talk to them and I see what they're doing, and they're doing everything they could possibly do. Of course, makes sense to use something like this. I love the idea that we have a tool in our tool belt that helps regulate appetite while using a nutrition plan that's going to help them keep the weight off in the long run. Where I think it can get a little tricky is if we don't pair these medications with nutrition advice or with help, then we aren't really teaching people how to eat in the long run. And that may not end up with long term success. I love using appetite suppressants. I will say that my nutrition strategies have to change a little bit sometimes when I use these, because I'm such a proponent of eating enough food to keep you full. Sometimes people find with these appetite suppressants, especially with some of the newer medications, that they work so well that they really can't eat as much protein or fat as they were eating before. And we need to often change the strategy a little bit. The idea is that we're still going to try to find ways to get enough protein so we don't lose muscle mass on a weight loss journey. So that might mean something very practical, like changing from a higher fat Greek yogurt for breakfast to a lower fat Greek yogurt. That lower fat might not last as long fullness wise, but then that actually helps with the appetite suppressant because they don't need the higher fat content because the medication is helping. Sometimes I do change my recommendations depending on the person and how they're responding to the medications. I love teaching about nutrition because I feel like with all things, once we understand the why behind something, it makes so much more sense on implementing it in real life. And I've noticed this even with my kids. If I give them the why behind the rule, they're more likely to go, oh, okay, that sounds good. So, one of my favorite things to do is teach people about nutrition. I don't need everybody to get a degree in nutrition to be able to understand it. But one of the basic things is understanding the macronutrients, the carbohydrates, the proteins, and the fats. And when it comes to appetite, it's really important that while there are a lot of really healthy foods that are carbohydrates, and eating the whole version of them keeps you much more full than a highly processed version of them, the carbohydrates typically get digested in about 2 hours. So they aren't going to hold us for a really long time. A protein, on the other hand, might keep us full for maybe 4 to 6 hours, and a fat might keep us full for 6 to 8 hours. So when you combine these foods together and you understand the physiology of eating a balanced meal and the importance of them, that the carbohydrate is going to give you some energy and the protein is going to keep it and the fat are going to keep it there longer. When you combine these things together, you really get a fullness feeling that you might not have ever experienced if most of your life you've been eating highly processed standard American diet foods. I think I talked about cereal in the past. Cereal is mostly carbohydrate and isn't a balanced food. It really needs something added to it to increase the satiety effect of it to keep us full. I really love the idea of helping my clients see why the recommendations I'm giving them are going to work. The best lesson, though, is actually doing it. So it's when somebody comes back and says, I tried on the weekends. I have a breakfast with scrambled eggs and toast, and I feel more full than on the weekdays when I have cereal. I'm like, well, that makes complete sense to me because it has more nutrients and it's more balanced. When we are talking about a weight loss journey and making lifelong changes, we certainly cannot separate the fact that our environment plays a huge impact, our physical environment in our home, where we eat our food, whether it's at work, in a work cafeteria, or maybe out to eat with coworkers for lunch. There's so many varieties of what impacts what we eat and why we eat and what we choose. I think I heard someone say once that you can't separate the psychology from the physiology when it comes to food and nutrition. So, in order for us to really make a long term change and to keep the weight off and have a sustainable weight loss journey, we have to talk about all of the reasons that you love certain foods. I had somebody tell me once that they always had ice cream every night at 8 o'clock, and it was so important in their family culture that even when they moved out of the house, they would call their parents and have an ice cream date at 8 o'clock every night. If you have this tradition in your family, you're going to want to honor it and you might really value it. There might be things that you just don't want to change. So I always talk to my clients about what are your non negotiables? What are the things that you really need? What do you have to have? And let's find a way to work with them in a way that's going to be sustainable for you. You can't deny the things that you really, really love and that you really want to do. And if you want to do something, you can do pretty much anything. If I came at a client and said, oh, you can never eat this again or don't ever do that again, it's probably not going to last very long. So going back into the deeper roots of why we have certain behaviors and how our environment has shaped us. And sometimes it can be as simple as I keep things out on the counter instead of putting them in the cupboard. And it might be I keep chips on the counter, and that's just a habit I've had for my whole adult life. And I don't really need to do that. I don't have an emotional attachment to them. I'm wondering if I just move them out of my sight, if it might change my cravings. There are things that are environmentally changeable, and then there are things that are deep emotional attachments that we probably aren't going to totally walk away from. So this is where we have to evaluate each person and what is the most important piece to them and how the food and culture have impacted us. We can't deny that we eat for so many reasons. We eat out of celebration. I think pretty much every culture I've ever learned about has some sort of celebration that includes foods, and usually that includes sweets and dessert. We're not going to walk away from that completely. It's how do we incorporate it and how can we work with it?